Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
I remember as a kid, I grew up in upstate Michigan, Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It probably could have been anywhere, but there was a story of this guy, and I don't know if it was true or not, but it was certainly a very interesting story. Guy bought a house, and the house had a barn that went with it. And as the story goes, the owner of the house, the husband had died. Women tend to outlive men. There's no great secret there. And the widow had the house, and she's just looking to unload it, going to move away, and felt kind of bad because she's like, you know what, I hate to do this, but there's the barn, and I just need you to be responsible for everything in the barn. It's a lot of junk. And so anyhow, the guy buys the house and got a reasonably decent deal on the house, and he's just like, you know what, I'll deal with the barn. That's just the way it is. So he goes in the barn, and there's like a 62 Chevy Corvette in there, which if you're not a car person, you don't have to be a car person. That was worth a lot of money. And he was like, holy crap, what did I step into? I'll deal with the rest of this stuff, but it's a great find. The car probably wasn't worth more than the house, but it certainly enhanced the ROI of what he bought. The reason I tell that story kind of leads into today's program, because I have Steve Beacham on here with me, and Steve was referred to me by John Marshall, who I just was in a networking meeting with, and we had a call, and it was just kind of a great thing, and Steve has referred me to all sorts of barns with great things in them. Steve is one of them. Steve is a professional speaker. He's the president of Hometown Mortgage, which is in Alpharetta, Georgia. An author. He's a national speaker. Before we hit record, he was talking about the speech he's doing next week with Fran Tarkenton, who was the quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings when they lost 4 Super Bowls. I don't think they were in a row, but they lost 4 Super Bowls. Still, they made the Super Bowl, right? A lot of teams have never made the Super Bowl. But he certainly runs his business, but he's helps other individuals and companies succeed through networking and leveraging their social connections. Over the years, he has applied a concept which he calls, and we're going to dive into this, helping without hustling. And he claims that he has become the mayor of his village, which is a concept that he explains in his book, Bass Ackward Business. And hopefully he explains it here. So, Steve, there it is. He just showed me the book for our listening audience. Well, this is an audio podcast, but anyhow, Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, Frank. Glad the barn finds you.
Yeah, well, there you go. So you're the mayor of the village. Tell me about it.
Well, I think you just kind of gotta, if you're doing business in your community, let's say, and most people in professional sales or services are doing that. It's not a nationwide sort of thing. You're just trying to, you're a local attorney, local real estate agent, shoe store owner. You want to be the go-to guy in the community. And I was sitting there going one day, who's the go-to guy in my community? If the garbage doesn't get picked up, there's a pothole in the road.
Yeah.
Who's the guy you want to be able to call? And it's the mayor. And, in a small town, the mayor's kind of the guy, right? He knows everybody. And so I thought, you want to be kind of the mayor of your village just being your particular sphere of influence. It doesn't have to be the whole town. Yeah. You just need to be the go-to guy for your people. And if they're calling you for stuff or questions, then you get to refer out a lot of people that are in your network. And of course, who doesn't like a referral? And if you refer a lot of people out, then hopefully some of those people will refer you back. So,
well, absolutely. I would say not hopefully. I just think through human nature in time, they're kind of, I say compelled. I don't mean that in a legal sense, but they just kind of feel a sense of obligation, right? It's, somebody does something.
Read Robert Cialdini's book, Influence.
And, yeah.
And he told I remember one of the stories was it's like the Harry Krishners. You remember those? They're in the airport.
Yes.
You got to be a certain age to remember that. But
Well, that was
they'd
back
walk with you.
that was back in the day when you could go to the gate to either drop off your loved one,
Right.
or wait for them to arrive. Yes.
Right. But he made a comment in his book about they would walk along with you and ask you for money for their, tribe or whatever it was. And some people give money. He said, then they got smart and they started giving you a rose. They'd walk along with, sir, would you like this rose? And then you would, because they gave you something, then they could ask for something in return. And that's the same thing. Like if I buy you lunch, you feel the desire. And he said it exists in every culture, Robert Cialdini did. And I went, you know what happens if you go full bore with that? What if you say, okay, that's the way it is? And then Zig Ziglar says, giving up people what they want, they'll give you what you want. Right. And so I just kind of went whole hog with that philosophy because it sounded a hell of a lot better than cold calling,
Yeah. Well, I think when you become the mayor of your village, and as you kind of clarified in there, when we say village, it's not necessarily a town. It's really kind of defined by where you're operating. So you could be that coach or consultant who has the national or the international stage. Tony Robbins, his village is the world.
Bigger.
Bigger. Fran Tarkenton, he's got but when you're doing those things, you're doing things for people, and people are returning those gestures, if you will. I don't want to call them favors, but they just want, but other people just look and like, you know what, geez, I need to know Steve. I just need to be in that sphere somehow.
Yeah. So I just decided it kind of happened a crazy way that I was, I'm in the mortgage business and we call on real estate agents. And back in the day when you could just walk into a real estate office, I walked in one day and there was this lady there, this agent. I remember she was smoking a cigarette and drinking coffee.
You are dating yourself if she was inside smoking a cigarette. You've hit on Hare Krishna, you're smoking indoors. All right.
So I'm like, what's the problem, Sally, or whatever her name was? And she said, my husband lost his job today. And I'm like, what does he do? He's a roofer. And I said, well, what if can I help you see if I can help you get him a roofing job? And she said, oh, that would be awesome. Cause I don't know how we're going to pay our mortgage. I don't know how we're going to pay our car payments. Cause she really wasn't in the business full time. That was just kind of a club, and it still is with a lot of real estate. But anyway, I found her husband a roofing job. And I called a couple of my builder friends, and it wasn't a good time in the economy. But anyway, we were able to do that. And next time I saw her, she hugged my neck. Thank you. You're so nice. You're so kind. And I said, you know what? That's a lot more fun. Yeah. Wonder if I make that my whole life purpose is to help people get from where they are to where they want to go. All I do all day long is figure out who I can help. Don't cold call anybody. Don't ask anybody for a mortgage. Just help people all the time. Will enough of those people call me back? And so that's my whole marketing philosophy is just, I'm looking for people to help, not people to sell to.
Well, here's the $64,000 question. It won't be the $1 million question because this is kind of a throwback episode. But the big question is does it work? I'm sure people are listening. Does it work?
Oh, hell yes. And it's a lot more fun. So the next step with that was I said, what do I want? How do I want a phone call or how do I want to get a customer? And I said, the ultimate situation is somebody calls me and says, Steve, this is Jim. And my friend Frank told me to call you. He said, you're the best mortgage guy in the whole wide world. And I had to do my loan with you, right? That's what we all want. And I thought that if I'd spend that time really helping these other people and then really doing what I call being Santa Claus for them. So I meet somebody new. I want to go deep in the conversation as they'll let me go. I want to know as much about them as I can. And the whole time in my brain, I'm thinking about how can I help this person? What could I do today to rock their world? How can I be Santa Claus for them today? And that's all I think about in every interaction I'm in. And so it just makes life more fun. It makes selling more fun, because you're really not selling. You're just helping people with whatever their situation is. You just happen to be the person that's doing it,
So that's where you came up with the term helping without hustling. Basically, you're not having to hustle for sales. You're just
Because
out there.
when you get into business, right? They're like, hey man, you need to go out there and hit the real estate agents, or you need to call on the attorneys, or whatever the market is that you're in. There's certain people you go call on, and you're supposed to go just tear the doors down and tell them, and you walk in and what we call vomit all over them. Hey, I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, and who cares about any of that? It's just.
Yeah.
I just totally dramatically just threw all of that out the window and just said, I'm just going to help people. Well, and it's been great.
Here's my take on what you just said is everybody is instructed to go and go out and, beat on doors, meet people, hustle, if you will. We'll use your term, to hustle. You're different. They're all the same, right? I mean, how many times, I've got more of a national focus. I get barraged with whatever, financial advisors, coaches, whatever, people trying to sell me stuff, and it's just nonstop. Got a call from a guy just the other day, young kid. He's up in Nashville. He moved to Nashville. He's got a job there. He's like, he's a younger, better version of you. Maybe not better, but younger.
He's a hell of a guy, though, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Well, but his whole thing is I'm loving just connecting people. How do I make money doing this, right? And that's a question.
Well, there's some key parts to that. Okay.
Yep.
The first part is you got to be better about painting people a picture of what it is you're looking for. So we're in a conversation and I'm asking you, how you doing, Frank? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm digging down and you're going, how are you doing? How was your weekend? It was great. How was your weekend? We'll bust that up and say, no, I'm not going to do that kind of conversation. I'm going to how you doing, Frank? I'm doing great. Tell me about it. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about your business. And I want to get all the information I can out of you. And then eventually that reciprocity kicks in that conversation. And you say, Steve, tell me about your business. Tell me about you. And normally somebody in my world would say, well, I'm in the mortgage business and rates are high. And, do you know anybody that's buying a house? But it's too vague. And so I try to get people to say, you got to give them a deeper picture. You got to give them something they can see. So a better picture would be, hey, Frank, who do you know that, if you were going to sell your house or you were going to buy a house, who's the agent you would call? I mean, does she work for like Keller Williams or Remax or Century 21? And as I name those companies, those are pictures in your head and you see that. And so then you go, well, I'd call Sally. She's my wife's best friend. And I'm like, man, I'd love to meet Sally if she's a fun, good person. You go, yeah, I'll hook you up. And that's how I meet all my real estate agents. Or, if I'm speaking a lot and I want to get more speaking stuff and I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, hey man, do y'all ever have a conference? Do y'all have workshops or sales meetings at your company? Yeah. Do y'all ever talk about how you could increase your prospecting or how you could, how you need some more sales skills or things like that? And they say, yeah. I say, well, that's kind of what I do. And I don't know if it'd be appropriate at your place, but if y'all ever need a speaker, I'd love to come. Or do you know anybody that does that in your industry? So I'm trying to give them things that when they see that or they hear it, they go, oh, I need to call Steve because I left them a little bit more information than, hey, if you need anybody needs a speaker or if you know anybody needs a mortgage guy.
Well, the other thing that hit me as you're talking about that is when we talk about helping and giving, is the whole notion of authenticity and giving people really what they value. Because over the years, I've talked to people who, well, I won't mention anybody in particular, but a guy I know, he's a payroll guy. Good guy, works hard. During the busy season, he races around town Saturday morning delivering donuts to accountants. That's nice. But if I'm an accountant sitting in my keister 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, I don't need a donut.
No.
And
shame on him for doing that because you gotta make all the interactions personal, not professional.
Right.
So that's a professional way to do it. But if you knew this particular accountant liked fly fishing and you just brought him a fly, or the next guy likes duck hunting and you brought him a duck call or a shell or something. If that, they're like, okay, he gets me. He gets what I'm into. And that's how you change an interaction.
Well,
people just don't want to spend the time doing it, but it's easy.
Yeah, hearkening back to your story about the realtor whose husband lost, to her that was life-saving. Not actually, but in her mind, it's like, oh my gosh, I've this Steve has solved the problem for me, and
Right.
hopefully,
And
she
that,
smokes, so
that
she's probably not around anymore. But but
well,
for the
that's
rest of her life, she talked about you, right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So
that's
then
great.
I got this other thing that I do, Frank, that's really cool, and I call it direct connect. And so
Okay.
what, I don't know, you probably had this happen, right? Somebody calls you and says, "Hey man, I need heating and air conditioning guy," and
Yep.
you go, "Okay, yeah, call Jimmy. Here's his phone number." And then you see Jimmy and say, "Hey, Jimmy, did my friend call you?" "No, I don't know. No, I don't think I got that phone call," right? So he never knew that you sent him that referral. So what I've been looking for a way to kind of make that stronger. And I came up with this thing called Direct Connect. So whenever anybody calls me and they say, "Hey, I need a HVAC guy," I say, "Okay, hang on a second." Then I go on my phone and I do a 3-way call, and I call the HVAC guy and I say, "Hey, Barrett, I got this guy, Frank, on the other line. He needs his air conditioner look at. You want to talk to him?" "Oh God, yeah, let me talk to him." Then I hook him up. So it takes time out of my day, about 5 more minutes, and then I let them do introduction. I like, "Hey, I'm going to send you two guys each other's contact information, and y'all talk offline. I got to go to work." And
Yeah.
they go, "Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve." And so since I've been doing that, it's turbocharged my referral business, because now even if I call my HVAC guy Barrett and I get his voicemail, I still bring you in, and then I say, "Hey Barrett, I got Frank on the line. Frank, tell him what your problem is. You blah blah blah. Here's my phone number. Blah blah blah." And it's just it's fascinating how much I get so much more reciprocity by taking that extra 5 minutes to do that direct connect. And if you're not doing that, it's a game changer. And I highly suggest people think about doing that.
No, I like it. I like it for a couple of reasons, and it really underscores the notion that when you're making these connections, you're really helping two people, right? I
Yes.
mean, the woman whose husband lost her job, you know what, helping her, the builder, it's hard to find good people. It'll always be hard to find good people, and so you're helping that person. But in the HVAC story, it's like, all right, your friend needs whatever, air conditioning or heating, depending upon time of the year. And the HVAC person always needs business. So you're really helping two sides. But by making that direct connection, you really take the burden off. You take the burden off the person needing the service, because they're like, oh, I got a call. I don't know how I'm going to be received. And the person who is the HVAC person is like, oh, this is great, because now I don't have to find time to make the call. It's, the connection is made. And it's,
Well,
it might not work
yeah.
out, but you
So
can't guarantee that.
I was reading Napoleon Hill one day, and he wrote this. He's got this book, and a lot of people don't know about it. It's called Outwitting the Devil. Have you
Oh,
ever
okay.
read that book?
I have not. Yeah.
It's fantastic. So it's a great little story, but it goes something like, Napoleon got rich doing, after he wrote Think and Grow Rich, he got rich, and he bought into a newspaper in Chicago. He always wanted to own a newspaper. He thought he was a journalist.
Yeah.
And the guy that owned the newspaper exposed the mob. This is back in the 20s or 30s or
Yep.
something. Exposed some mob members in Chicago. Well, the mob took this guy out and told Napoleon that he was next because he owned part of the newspaper. So he fled for his life, went to this cabin in like West Virginia that a friend owned. He lived there for 2 years, afraid he was going to get killed any day. And he started thinking about, when I'm out speaking to people and I'm trying to get them to change their thought process, why don't they do that? So he came up with this idea to write this book. And he said, it's like the devil is talking to you, and the devil's saying, no, that doesn't work, or don't go knock on that guy's door because he's already got an insurance guy, or,
Right.
or don't take them donuts because he doesn't really want to talk to you, So he's like, this devil is talking to you in your ear. And he said, so I came up with this idea that from one of his sayings is, fear is not knowing the answer to the question. And so what happens when we cold call and when we prospect, we go out there and we're like, I don't know if I'm gonna get out of the car because that real estate agent's already got a mortgage guy, right? So we don't go because we're not sure if they're going to say, hey, man, I'm glad you came today, or, man, get out of here. I don't want anything to do with you. I'm tired of you mortgage guys. We don't know which one of those we're going to get. So because we don't know the answer to the question, we don't proceed. And so I think that what I like about this way that I do business is there's no fear because I'm never asking anybody for their business. I'm going to see people just to say, hey man, I'm just in town and I've got X amount of customers calling me for mortgages, and some of those people might need tires, and you've got a tire shop, and tell me a little bit about your business, and would you like for me to refer those people to you? And they all go like, yeah, come on in, have a Coke, So it's an easier way to prospect because you're not prospecting with your agenda.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is if I walk out of a building and there's a homeless person sitting there, I can't go talk to him about my agenda. I can't say, hey, dude, you need to, you want to buy a house? You want me to pre-qualify you for a mortgage? What I can do with that homeless person is I can bring my assets to the conversation. And everybody has assets. And those assets are, I could give him a little money. I could give him a ride because I got a car. I could help him find a job because I know people that have a business. I could take him to a hotel and pay for his room. I could do all this stuff to him based on the assets that I have. And so what happens is people don't go in with their assets. They go in with their agenda. And because you go in with your agenda, fear creeps in. And so you don't make the call. You don't go see people. But if you throw that all out and you say, dude, I'm going to be Santa Claus. I'm going to bring assets. I've got people that I know. I got people that I went to school with. I got people in my neighborhood. I got the knowledge in my brain of my industry. I'm going to go in there and see if I can help this person in any way. Then nobody ever tells you no because you're not asking them for their business.
Yeah, no, I love it. Let's shift gears here a little bit. How can the listening audience help you? You're the mayor, but the mayor needs help now and then. So,
well, the mayor, if you're in Georgia or Alabama, I could do a loan for you. If you know a cousin or an aunt or nephew or anybody, a friend that's a real estate agent in Georgia or Alabama, I sure would like to know them. But more importantly for your audience is I love going and speaking, and I've written 4 books, and I go out and I talk about kind of these same principles that we were talking about. And it's refreshing for a lot of people because they're frustrated about prospecting and growing their business. And it gives them a new way to look at it. And, so I do a lot of speaking with the financial industries. I don't know why, but I do, so if you know people at, Wells Fargo and Bank of America and Merrill Lynch and those kind of places, I love talking to them. And then insurance, do a lot of insurance guys. So, I've done stuff with Allstate, State Farm, Country Financial, a lot of banks. It's really crazy, Frank, but banks are starting to realize they have branch managers that are not doing any business development. In the old days, they'd go around, knock on people's doors, try to get them to open a checking account. They don't even do that anymore. They just sit in there and wait on people to come. And so now these banks are starting to go, hey, you got to get out. So I teach them a game I call Hometown Monopoly on how you get to know people that are in business and own buildings in your town. And so I can talk to them about that. And then real estate agents, I mean, I know that world inside out. Mortgage guys, I know that. So all those people, those types of people, franchises, you buy a franchise. So it's a great story. So I met a guy one time that came to speak to a little small group I was in. And he said, I want y'all to guess what I did. So we're trying to guess and we couldn't. He said, he finally said, okay, I invented one of the most famous people ever. And we're going, invented a most famous guy. We're like, what the heck? Anyway, this guy was head of marketing for McDonald's, and he invented Ronald McDonald. He invented the quarter pounder with cheese. And he came away with this story about, he said, we realized that once we got going, that what was happening is we were selling franchises. We weren't selling hamburger stores. And there was no shortage of people that had $500,000 that could buy a McDonald's franchise back in the early days. And there were rich people buying franchises, but they really weren't in the hamburger business. They really didn't care about hamburgers and shakes. And that was what we did. He said, I went to Ray Kroc and said, Ray, we got to quit selling franchises until that person can demonstrate that they own the hamburger and milkshake business within a 3-mile radius of their current location. And if they're not all in on that, and they're not into the community, and they're not doing what they need to do to really own that business in that community, then we shouldn't sell them another franchise. And he said, for a while, we quit selling franchises because people don't understand they got to own just 3 miles around your location before you can go anywhere else. Before you go to the next town, you need to own the current town.
Makes sense. Best way to get a hold of you, stevebeacham.com. Would that be a good way to connect with you?
stevebeacham.com, or Beach is my nickname. Beach at stevebeacham.com is my email, and my phone number is 770-634-2531.
I really appreciate your time with me today. It's been entertaining.
Frank, I can't thank you enough, man. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.